Hi, it's Dre Griggs with Obsidian Wisdom. Today we discuss the average retirement income in the United States. For this information, we're going to use the US Census Bureau and we'll be able to see how we're doing. For most of us, we just like a gauge, a benchmark, just to be able to say, you know what, I'm on track, I'm not on track, how much do I need? We'll even go into details about what the state average income looks like, and we'll talk about the average amount someone needs to have invested, what the average Social Security payment is, so you can put all that information together so you can decide whether you're on track and whether you need to make any adjustments. When it comes to the average retirement income in the United States for someone 65 and older, that number is $75,020 per year. For you to be able to have that amount of money, that's going to need to be mixed in a variety of ways. You guys already know I'm big on having multiple streams of income. You know that there are 7 streams of income the IRS says that they recognize, and that for most of us to be able to have a $75,000 retirement, that means we're probably going to have $1 million. That $1 million is going to generally come from 3 asset classes. You're either going to have $1 million in properties, we're talking about real estate, and then you have rental income that's being generated. You probably have $1 million business that's then generating the $75,000 a year for you. Or you're going to have $1 million in the stock market where you're investing that money and you're probably living somewhere off of 3 to 5%. I have another video and I'll put a link to it for you where I go through some of those withdrawal strategies for someone investing in the stock market. But you're basically going to need your money in one of those 3 asset classes. And the reason is pretty straightforward. If I'm not generating money from my investments, then I have to be actively working. And when we all retire, that is not how we want to make our money. So for you and me to be able to say, you know what, I don't want to have to trade my time for money anymore, that means we have to have some sort of investments that's generating more income for us. And again, those asset classes is going to be real estate, the stock market, or a business. Now, before we get into the numbers and discuss ways for you to be able to generate $75,000 a year, let's first start with Social Security. The average Social Security payment is about $1,800 per month, which is about $22,000 per year. So that means you only have to come up with another $54,000 from your investment to be able to live off of what the average retirement income is in the United States. For comparative purposes, $75,000 a year for retirement income in the United States, that's going to put you above the average income for the majority of the states. There are really only 7 states that even come anywhere near that $75,000, where if you're in one of those 7 states, then you may actually need a little bit more than the average retirement income. But of course, it depends what you're going to do in retirement. If you're going to be going on walks and picnics, sitting outside with a book, joining local organizations, then you may be able to live in any state because depending on how we structured your retirement, you may actually be just fine, that you don't actually need that average income. On the other hand, even though you might live in a low cost of living state, if you're traveling and doing all these amazing things, then your monthly income might not be enough. You might actually need more than you were thinking because you're going to be joining all these communities, these golf organizations, these travel groups. And so you might need more than that average $75,000. When it comes to the 7 states that are actually pretty close to that $75,000 a year, that's going to be Connecticut at 69,310, Maryland at 69,750, New Jersey at 70,890, Washington at 72,350, California at 73,220, New York at 74,870, and then coming in at number 1 is Massachusetts with an average annual income of $76,600. So if you're simply looking at the average US retirement income and then you're looking at the average annual salary that the people have that live in these states, you can then say that these are the 7 states that are pretty close to that average, where I need to be very mindful on whether $75,000 is enough for me. A good rule of thumb, just a quick and dirty for you to be able to see how we're doing, we normally will say whatever your current income is, we assume that your lifestyle is based off your current income. If you take 80% of that salary, that's normally going to be retirement income. And the reason that we say that is you're not paying the same taxes and you're not saving money for your retirement. Because you're not saving any money for your retirement, that likely means that you don't need your entire income because you probably weren't living off of 100% of your income anyways. As a result, that's why we normally say 80%. That takes into consideration the state that you're living in and the cost of living and the electricity, the food, all that jazz. Now, if you plan on moving to a higher cost of living state, then we would need to make an adjustment. If you plan on moving to a lower cost of living state or even leaving the country as a whole and moving to a lower cost of living country, well, then we can make an adjustment as well where you don't need as much. But based on the fact that the average Social Security payment is about $1,800 a month, which is about $22,000 a year, that means for you to have the average retirement income of a United States citizen that you have to come up with another $54,000. Now, a quick and simple way that we can see how much money we need to have invested in the stock market to be able to live off of that additional $54,000 a year, I sometimes use the rule of 1,000. All the rule of 1,000 is a very fancy way of saying that for every $1,000 per month that you want in retirement income, that you're going to need $240,000 invested in the stock market. That's just based on the average returns and just what we normally see. If you then say, okay, well, what's $54,000 divided by 12? That's going to be about $4,500 every single month that you would need in addition to the Social Security income. So that means we need somewhere between $4,000 to $5,000, which means you need to have 4 to 5 times 240,000, which is about $1.2 million invested in the stock market. If you have $1.2 million in your investment fund, then you can say, okay, based on the rule of 1,000, I know that I'm somewhere around what I would need. Now, granted, you may have a higher return or you may have a lower return. You may have dividend stocks where you're getting this extra money. You may have money invested in REITs, which is a real estate investment trust. So you may have money coming to you that way. But we're simply saying that on average, if you use the rule of 1,000 just to give you an idea of what you would need, that would be about $1.2 million that you would need to have set aside in some sort of an investment fund. And then you could be able to live off of that 4% every single year, which is going to generate that $54,000 every single year that you need. And then ideally, you won't be dipping into the principal so you don't have that fear of running out of money. And I'll put a link to another video where I go into a little bit more detail about the rule of 1,000. Based on the 6 streams of income that you can generate outside of actively working, I normally tell people the stock market is a great place to start. And the reason is pretty straightforward. When you look at those 6 streams, and I'll put them on the screen for you, you can see that the stock market gives you access to all of them. If you want rental income, you can invest in REITs, real estate investment trusts. If you want investment income, then you can invest in government or corporate debt and purchase bonds, which will pay you an interest income every single month or quarter or year, depending on what you choose. If you want profits from a business, well, that's what the stock market is. You're a silent partner in all these businesses, and as the business grows, the value of your shares grow, and then you're able to sell these shares. If you hold it for a year and a day, then that's considered capital gains. If you invest in companies that pay a dividend, well, that's investment income. If you invest in companies that have proprietary information that they sell and license and lease out, well, then you can have royalty income. You can see why the stock market is normally a great place. That is why the top 1% of wealth in the United States owns over half of the stock market. That's why the top 10% of wealth in the United States owns 90% of the stock market. It is a great place to hold your money, and it gives you access to all of these streams of income so that you can grow your portfolio and no longer have to trade your time for money, but you can start trading your money for more time. Now, if you're someone who's not that interested in the stock market and you're more interested in owning properties and real estate, there's a rule of 1%, which is just the idea that normally I want to be able to charge and rent at least 1% of the value of my property. So if I have a $300,000 property, I want to be able to charge $3,000 a month in rent. Of course, the amount that you charge in rent each month doesn't really speak on what your cash flow is. It has something to do with it, but it really doesn't tell you how much. It depends on whether you have a mortgage or the property is free and clear. It depends on whether you have a management group or you're doing it yourself. It depends on whether the property is old or new and you have to invest a lot in fixing stuff. But what you would think is, okay, if I'm able to cash flow, which means I'm able to have $1,000 in my pocket every single month after all the bills on my rental property are paid, well, we only have to get to $4,500 a month. So that means you would only need about 5 properties. If you can cash flow $1,000 a month, that's when all the bills are paid. You still have $1,000 that's in your bank account every single month. So you can have 5 properties and you'll be okay. Now, if you're someone who says, well, Dre, I have a mortgage, it's a higher interest rate, and as a result, I'm not able to get that $1,000 per month. Well, that's fine. Whatever the number is, then that's the amount that you would need. So for example, to make the math easy for me, if you instead only cash flowed $500 a month from your property, which is pretty reasonable, that means you would need 10 properties to get to that $5,000 a month that you needed to generate to go along with your Social Security income. And of course, 10 properties is a lot. So this is normally going to be something for someone who enjoys rental properties, or it's going to be at least for someone who wants to be able to have a management group handle it for them. They want to be able to have the assets appreciate. Maybe they have the 10 properties and their plan is to sell 2 of them when they retire. And then they put that money in the stock market to be able to generate some additional income. And then they have the rental income as well. There's a lot of ways that we can do this. And that's what I normally call it wisdom piecing. It's the idea of putting a puzzle together. There's a lot of pieces that work. I know a lot of people make it seem like there's only one right way. But what I've seen is it can work a variety of ways. It depends a lot on what your goals are and what your comfort zone is, and your overall risk tolerance and how long we have to be invested. All of these things come into consideration when you make your own personalized retirement plan. Now, the stock market and real estate aren't very exciting for you. Then you have the option of opening a business, and you can have this business generate that $5,000 per month. And you'll find that you have this leverage in the business that is pretty nice. You're able to generate a lot more money from a lot less being invested. And I'll put a link to another video where I go through that, where we talk about the leverage of the real estate and the leverage of a business. Well, if you're able to invest $200,000, let's say, in a business, it wouldn't be unreasonable for you to be able to purchase a business that is generating $5,000 a month net cash flow, right? That's what you get to take home. That would not be unreasonable. Of course, you have other risk. And I always want to warn you guys when you talk about leverage, it means that I'm also on the hook for more than what I invest. And in a simple way to think about that is when you invest in the stock market, you're really only on the hook for the amount of money that you invested. You invested $1 million, you could lose all $1 million, but you can't lose more than that. If you invested $1 million in real estate, you probably only put 20% down. As a result, that means you're actually owe the other 80%. So you're actually on the hook for more than the $1 million that you had because you also were leveraging that to be able to generate multiple streams of income from a lower amount being invested. And then when you look at a business, while it may feel like, hey, I'm investing $1 million in a business and then I generate the money out of the business, you're actually on the hook for more than that. If there is a liability, if someone dies or someone gets injured or someone sues you, you could be on the hook for more than the $1 million that you invested in the business. It depends on how the business is structured, and a variety of other things would come into consideration. But you can see that when you have more leverage, which means a way that you can make more money by putting in less, you're also leveraging your risk. You also have to take that in consideration, that risk and reward factor. As always, I'm thankful for your time. I've given you all the information that you need to be able to determine how will I generate the income that I need so that I can have a happy and healthy retirement. If you're someone that feels that you might benefit from some additional help, then you can always go to obsidianwisdom.com to learn more. Until next time, stay safe and enjoy life.